Hey, I'm Drake Sandman. I'm going to be talking about wildlife in urban parks, specifically focusing on William B. Umstead State Park and Shenck Memorial Forest in Raleigh, North Carolina. Both of these parks are open to the public. The William B. Umstead State Park is operated by the state, whereas Shenck Forest is owned and operated by North Carolina State University. Because of this, they have very different management practices, which will be briefly gone into further into this presentation. I want to start off real quick by thanking my group members in this project, Anna Lou King, Emily Brake, and Maggie Hart, as well as our advisors, Dr. Roland Kays and Noel Griffin. We could not have done this project without them. So first off, we saw a lot of animals in this project, so we felt it was important to narrow it down to just a few. So we're looking at the white-tailed deer, the gray fox, the coyote, and the northern raccoon, and specifically we're looking at the way their populations interact with each other over time. We then focused further in on coyote and gray fox populations to see how the expanse of coyote range in the last few decades has affected gray fox populations here. As you can see in this figure of coyote migration from 1990 to 2016, coyotes have spread widely throughout the entire country. And while they weren't in North Carolina until the 1990s, they now can be found everywhere within the state. So what exactly were we looking for? We were looking for species relationships between the two parks, as well as some predator-prey relationships that we expected to be there. We had a few predictions going into this that we were expecting to see. We expected coyote populations to increase in response to the urbanization of the area because coyote populations spread throughout the U.S. as a result of human activities. We expected, as coyote populations increased, for gray fox populations to decrease, and we also expected that as coyote population increased, deer population would also decrease. So real quick about our process. We designated locations using GIS mapping within each of the two parks to make sure that we got a good variety in the location of our cameras. We went out, we set our cameras. After a month, we came back and collected our cameras, and then we analyzed the data, or we uploaded the data, and then we analyzed data from previous years using Excel and Tableau. So the data analyzed in this particular presentation ranges from the years 2013 to 2020. This is a map of what our GIS mapping of Umstead looked like. You can see we had 3 distinct regions that we were placing cameras in, and on the right you can see the in-app view of what we were looking at with Avenza as we were figuring out exactly where we were putting cameras. So you can actually see where the cameras ended up for that part of the project. These are where all the species were observed in Umstead, and these are where all the species were observed in Shenck for coyote, gray fox, raccoons, and white-tailed deer. So let's take a quick look at the overall trends. White-tailed deer by far were detected more than any other species in this project, being the vast majority of all of the animals seen. Comparing between Shenck and Umstead, we're going to start off with the gray fox. So the gray fox population, and in both forests, decreased over time. You can see in Shenck Forest there's a minor spike between 2013 and 2015, but that quickly declined, with almost none being found in 2020. And at Umstead, there's a very quick decline down to almost none whatsoever. This in Umstead could be because gray foxes like to climb trees, and many of the trees in Umstead are not conducive to their climbing. On the other hand, if you look at coyote detection rates, coyote populations have increased in both forests. You can see in Shenck Forest in 2013, and in Umstead in 2013, they had fairly low populations, and both populations have increased over time. When you look at the populations next to each other, you can see that blue line is coyote populations and that orange line is the gray fox populations. You can see in Shenck they're relatively consistent with each other up until around 2016, where you can see as coyote populations start increasing, gray fox populations start decreasing at the same time. You see a similar thing in Umstead, though to a less dramatic degree, but as coyote populations increase, gray fox populations decrease, which does fit with what we were expecting to see. So, how does the impact of coyotes affect natural predators in the area? We've looked at those two graphs of gray fox populations, but this shows it a little more clearly. In my opinion, you can see at the top gray fox populations from 2016 to 2020 where they were located, and coyote populations in the same range down below. You can clearly see that as more and more coyotes are detected, fewer and fewer foxes are detected until 2020, where almost none are detected whatsoever. Part of this is likely due to their diet. Both gray foxes and coyotes eat fruits and berries as well as small mammals and birds, which puts them as direct competitors with each other. In addition, intra-guild mortality could be a factor, that being predators being preyed upon by other predators. You can see in this particular study that was done that gray foxes have the highest rate of intra-guild mortality, meaning that they are the most commonly preyed upon predator species in this study. So clearly introducing a new predator and a competitor has harmed gray fox populations, but have they harmed the Umstead and Shenck ecological community overall? So when we look at a similar map to before, but this time with coyote populations against white-tailed deer populations, you can see that the white-tailed deer population has remained largely unchanged in the 2016 to 2020 time period, meaning that coyote populations really didn't affect the white-tailed deer population very much, which was not exactly what we expected. But all this brings up the question, what could we do to help protect the gray fox? So one thing that could be done is to introduce diverse forest structures into Umstead. Shenck Forest's population of gray foxes decreased much slower than the ones in Umstead did, and partially because they had trees that they were able to climb. If intra-guild predation is really one of the leading causes of the decline in gray fox populations, the inability of them to climb the majority of the trees in Umstead State Park could be a deciding factor in this. So by introducing a more diverse forest structure, there'd be more places for them to climb, and therefore more space for them to flee from predators. Thank you for listening to this talk, and special thanks again to Dr. Kays and Noel Griffin. We could not have done this